Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
Welcome to Spike Camp. Tonight's guest is Mike Drury. Mike is an avid mountain hunter, conservationist, and a gun builder. He's the owner of Alpine Riflecraft out of Calgary, Alberta, and he's designed an ultralight mountain rifle system that's 100% designed, engineered, and manufactured in Canada. We invited Mike on tonight to walk us through a detailed look at the Zenith rifle system. Welcome to the Camp Chat, Mike.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Right on.
Yeah.
It's our pleasure. Well, I know you've done a couple of recent podcasts with some of our colleagues over at Wild Sheep, with Kyle and his crew, and then our buddy Adam over at Beyond the Kill. So we don't need to dig too deep into your history and stuff, but maybe you could just give our audience a short intro and background on Mike Drury and tell us how you got here.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm in Calgary, living in Calgary. I've been here for, 25 years now. Went to university here, did a mechanical engineering degree, late 90s, early 2000s. And was always drawn to the mountains. I'm actually a Saskatchewan kid. That's where I was born and grew up, and moved to Alberta when I was about 17. And school, and just always had a love for the mountains, and then essentially found out you could hunt bighorn sheep, and that kind of took things to another level.
Yeah, so, I can only imagine, man. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So how long you been a gun builder then?
For a long time. I really just dabbled in it for myself and friends. I've only really built a handful of rifles, restocked a bunch, done bedding jobs, a few rebarrel jobs, but really built a few Wildcats. Did one more involved project that was pretty cool, on a Kimber 8400 with a half octagon, half round barrel. With some machining on the receiver, and that was kind of the last. I actually built a pair of them, one for myself and a buddy, and that was the last rifle I built before I started on this project. So it's taken a lot of restraint to not want to go build other things in the meantime, and maintain the focus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine, right? I mean, I know a lot of gunsmiths, as you know, and the people that follow Spike Camp know that I'm pretty deep in the gun, in the gun side of things, and I know a lot of gunsmiths, and I can tell you the gunsmiths I know absolutely love doing the customs for the most part. Yeah. Then you get the odd caliber, or I don't even want to say caliber, the odd customer that has kind of like crazy demands, and they're a little challenging, like any frontline service work. You're going to have customers that are very picky and specific, but it is definitely a big jump to go from just a hobby, gunsmith custom builder to, ready for market production, high-end rifles. So I can only imagine that journey. We're going to pick away at that a little bit tonight too. So I'll be honest, I didn't hear much about, or if anything, about Alpine Riflecraft until a few months ago. I think I was on one of the forums, or one of my friends was asking me if I'd seen this rifle, and my initial impression when I first heard, oh yeah, there's another Canadian gunsmith who's going to be building custom rifles, buy the parts, slap them together, and away you go. Which is great, because it's a great sort of sub industry in the gun business. The custom gun world has come a long ways. There's a lot of components made specifically for that application. But what really caught my ear was the fact that you were building rifles in Canada with pretty much all Canadian components, and that you had designed your own action receiver for this system. And that got my attention. And then the next thing that got my attention was the fact that it was ultralight, like really ultralight. So I want to dig into that tonight and kind of pick your brain a little bit. I guess the first question I have would be, what was the primary objective and goal behind the Zenith system, and why did you embark on such a project?
I think well, the motivations were number one, primarily at the time, to see if I could. It was a bit of a personal challenge, but ultimately, like the goals for the rifle, and I guess the behind the why is really mountain rifles in general are, or very light rifles in general, can be difficult to shoot. They can be not so well balanced. They can be rear heavy, and these are all factors that make them challenging to stay on target in the field, and harvest your animal. I won't claim to be the world's best shot, but I've missed some critters with ultralight rifles in the past, probably because I couldn't get them to steady, or didn't have perfect form for the shot. So really the two parts were making a really light rifle that was very easy to shoot, and well balanced, but also trying to address some of the other, I'll call them, stigmas or problems with titanium receivers in general.
Yeah, and that's an interesting rabbit hole too, because when you look at the componentry required to build not only an ultralight action, but you want it to be accurate, and you want it to cycle smoothly, right? And titanium has a tendency to be sticky, or what's the term, galling? It'll gall on you with pressure and heat and things like that. There is challenges amongst the industry to keep that from happening, and I think the technology in the metal itself and the processes that the guns go through in the manufacturing process have really changed that. But still, you're right. I mean, what are your options, right, for materials when you build, trying to go light, right? It's titanium, or drilling holes where you shouldn't drill holes, and skeletonizing things that shouldn't be skeletonized, right? So
right, yeah.
Well,
yeah, and there's a few aluminum actions out there now as well. Obviously, Gunworks has their new NXT, and there's some bat aluminum actions, which are more for the bench crowd. But you're absolutely right. One, I guess maybe we should start on that rabbit hole, because that's kind of the heart of the rifle here. Titanium. So a lot of the things that I read over the years and heard was that, number one, titanium is not going to last under high cycle fatigue. So it's going to get fatigued and essentially begin cracking, or have crack initiation, long before steel. This is something that, it's well known in metallurgy. Titanium does not have the same high cycle fatigue life that steel does. It's a fact. So that was kind of the first issue I wanted to address, why that is, and if it's possible to get around it. And I think, the most common, well, I'll say the common material for receiver building As far as titanium goes, sorry, I'm just muting my phone here. In
Yeah,
the
no worries.
firearms industry is TI-64.
Mhm.
It's normally called grade 5 alloy, and it's strong stuff. It's you can heat treat it to a yield of like 150,000 psi. But at the end of the day, it's what you would call its maximum stress at full life cycle. We're talking, you know, hundreds of thousands of cycles is about 40% of its yield stress.
Okay.
So its actual ability to soak up that stress of being fired significantly decreases over time. And it's debatable whether the firearm you buy, you're actually going to shoot it enough to ever run into that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. If you're talking a life of 10,000 rounds, it's probably a non-issue. If you were going to talk 100,000 rounds, which I don't think is even part of the conversation for a hunting rifle, maybe you start to see that creep in. So that was one, issue I wanted to look at. And really, there are some grades that behave differently than grade 5 titanium. The most common one is called 6246, and it's essentially just a different titanium alloy, and that's what our receiver is made out of. And
Okay.
the main difference there is, and I'm really going down the rabbit hole here, but you really get into crystalline structure of the metal itself. So where a grade 5 is an alpha and beta phase titanium, the 6246 is purely beta phase. And so the difference there is what are called slip planes, and it's actually the planes of slip between the arrangement of the atoms in the molecules. And so alpha titanium essentially has few slip planes, but they're unobstructed. So as you stress that material, it will keep slipping. Beta phase titanium has many more slip planes, but they essentially all block each other off because they intersect. So it does not slip to the extent that alpha phase does. So the main difference between 64.6 and 6.4 is 64.6 can be heat treated to a much higher yield stress. So this receiver is on the order of 190,000 psi, and it retains 55% of its yield stress at full life cycle. So I did a lot of finite element analysis when I developed the action to prove out that at its infinite life, it's never going to be overstressed.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that
makes
sense.
Hopefully that was it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, it just speaks to the the thought process that you had going into this project right out of the gate, right? That's the basic foundation of the firearm is going to be the receiver, and it better work.
It better
it's
work.
Gotta work, right?
better not deform. It better not fatigue out or crack. The other aspect to that too, that I noticed, in the general, I'll call it the firearms manufacturing world, is when companies sub 6.4 titanium as a material for a receiver, nothing in the receiver changes dimensionally.
Okay.
Right?
So it doesn't matter. Okay.
Well, the part that matters though is titanium is actually not as stiff as steel. So what you wind up with is a receiver that the lugs can flex more, the receiver itself can flex more. And where I found that became important is actually lug deflection when the rifle's fired, and how much deflection in the lugs you actually get. So this receiver, it's not actually It's not designed. It's not a copy of anything else. It's not a clone. It's truly its own design, and part of the reason for that is because I started the design with titanium in mind. So the lug depth is greater. The the through thickness of the tenon area is greater than, and this is a small diameter action for standard case head cartridges, right? Not unlike a Kimber 84 series. So while it's like that, it's dimensionally different in pretty much every area, to account for those differences with the material.
Quick question then on the lugs. It's a two lug system, right?
It's a two lug. It's a traditional two lug 90-degree bolt throw. Probably the only thing that is somewhat different there is the both the bolt and the receiver lugs are helical. So rather than having just a chamfer on the bolt lug that kind of rides over a chamfer into the into battery, you actually have these two faces that slide against each other, and it actually helps that just the feel, that when you lock up, it's pretty smooth into battery. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's dig into the bolt itself a little bit.
Sure.
You said it's a smaller diameter.
It is, yeah. And I've got it here, so I should show you guys.
Okay, perfect.
So you can see what we're looking at.
Oh yeah, okay. So then what goes into the manufacturing as far as on the bolt side? Like what are you using for raw materials on the bolt itself?
Yeah, so the bolt is a 4000 series alloy. So it's 4330V, which is it's a carbon alloy. It's heat treated to about Rockwell 40 before we machine it. So a pretty high yield, like 185 KSI, and then post machining, it's actually nitrided, so it brings it up to, between 58 and 62 Rockwell. So these bolts, once they're machined here, they're salt bath nitrided in the Lower Mainland, actually. And that's the important part about the hardness there is that it's central to the issue of galling. So the closer your materials are in hardness, the higher the opportunity for them to gall. You basically have materials that can, the surfaces will stick together and tear. Stainless on stainless is especially known as being bad for that. So yeah, we've got a really high differential hardness between the two materials, and that really helps them not gall or stick together.
And then what? And then on the opposing side, with like with the rails and the race and stuff like that, that's titanium as well. Then on the opposite side of the bolt.
Sorry, as in, or like the.
Sorry. Yeah, on the action itself. So the rails, and on the receiver itself. So everything is titanium. There's no other parts. I guess that's what I was trying to say. There's no other materials.
No, it's one solid 2-inch bar of titanium. We do wire EDM the raceways. So that essentially, old school technology would be that they were broached. Versus a lot of receivers nowadays that are mass produced are actually extrusions. So that raceway is formed into them when they manufacture the piece. These are obviously, we're being a small volume, we're wire EDMing these, so it's basically electron discharge machining. They I don't know if you're familiar with that. They pull a wire. Yeah, they pull a wire. You drill a hole through the center. So we have our bore bolt bore that's
Mhm.
finish reamed, and then we connect a wire through there, a 10th thou diameter wire. It's got an electrical current running through it, and essentially that current erodes the material. So you carve the path of the lugs with the wire.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the bolt then for a second. A
Yes.
couple more quick questions on that. Maybe tell us a little bit about like the design of the bolt. You mentioned the bolt throw. I'm curious about
Sure.
the ergonomics of the bolt head itself,
Mm.
where it lands on lockup and that kind of stuff. So maybe you can walk us through the bolt.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So the bolt, it does made up here. I'll try and give you a better look at it. It does made up with a coned barrel breech. So
Okay.
we do use a cone there. Um, it's got a dovetailed race which captures the extractor head.
Mm-hmm.
The important part of that design is most of the extractor races now are basically just a square, and there is the possibility of that extractor jumping out of its groove off the case head if you had a
Okay.
really stuck case. Whereas this, as you drive it forward, trying to pull that case out, that dovetail locks it in place, so it can't pull off the bolt head. So
I
it's
mean, you're
just a
probably so basically in that case, say you had a really stuck case, you're
yeah
more than likely going to peel the rim off the case, like the extractor rim. It would come off before it would pop off, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Wow.
gonna wreck the case, which is better than not. I'd rather know I couldn't get it out with the bolt.
Yeah, for sure. And then I
Yeah,
guess some action designs are prone, the Remington 700s in the old days, or not the oldest days, because those were pretty good, but in some of the recent variations of the 700, that extractor was a weakness.
yeah, yeah,
And kind of made it a little interesting if your extractor broke in a bad situation. And yeah.
for sure.
What
Yeah, and
what
I've had some of those experiences too. Like I actually had a bolt handle fall off a Remington 700 on me. Um,
mm-hmm.
that was soldered on, right? They're all soldered,
Yeah.
as well as an extractor fail. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was early on in my career, and I quickly became a controlled round feed guy.
Yeah. There's a lot to say about that. And that's something too that I find interesting in your design, just at first glance. We've talked about this, sort of hinted about this early on when you were talking about it's not a clone. If you look at a lot of the actions out on the market for custom builds, or even some of the more mass produced, a lot of them copied or cloned their design off of the Remington 700 platform.
Yep,
But if you look around the different types of actions that have been available for whatever 100+ years, there's a lot that you can rob from the different designs that are good. Like
totally.
the footprint of the Remington 700 is nice. A lot of people like that. With the floor
Yeah,
plate system and everything else that they had. And then you get into the safety mechanisms from a Model 70, or claw extractor, like you're saying on this controlled round feed from Mausers and Winchesters. And all you have to do is pick up an old P64 Model 70, or an old 98 Mauser or something like that, and you can feel
yeah,
that how solid that extraction is. And yeah, one thing before I forget, um, let's talk a little about the firing pin and
yeah.
what
Perfect.
went into the design of the spring and all that fun stuff. I'll leave it to you.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So there's actually some military specs out there for the ignition of primers, and really that was kind of the guide as to where the
Okay.
design came from. It really comes down to energy delivered to the primer. So the military spec is essentially 100 inch ounces or greater. So there was a couple things I wanted to do with this. One is to have a fully guided firing pin so that it's never unguided or out of its bore. So the firing pin tip is fully guided. But the challenge I found with the smaller diameter bolt is that once you get enough travel and spring force, you really start running into high camming forces to cock the action. Because it's a small diameter bolt, when you get into a larger bolt like a standard REM 700 bolt, a lot of that goes away because your moment is just so much greater. Your point of contact on the bolt is not so close to the center line, and so to get that right amount of energy, the pin drop is actually 0.23 inches, so it's significantly more than other. I keep saying other small actions, but really, the Kimber is kind of the gold standard there, and it also has about a 28-pound spring in it, so it delivers between 106 and 110 inch ounces of energy with a lock time of calculated lock time of 1.9 milliseconds. So it's got lots of energy and it's fast. And the way I got around the cocking effort is it's actually a roller cocking mechanism. And I'll try and show you that on here. And so it might be we'll see how well we can see it.
Okay.
But you can see on the nose of the cocking piece there's a small wheel.
Okay.
Essentially right here.
I see it.
And so that rides on a ramp that's about 90 thou wide on the back of the bolt. And it's basically like going from a flat tappet cam in your muscle car to a roller cam. You just have that much less friction and resistance. And the cocking is super smooth. You don't have that metal on metal contact of a typical cocking piece on the rear of a bolt.
And that just plays to the smooth operation of that action. Everything with a wheel moves easier, obviously.
Totally.
Okay, so a question I would have then. So that essentially is sort of a moving part, I guess, inside the bolt, right? If it's a wheel, it's got to have some movement. What's the maintenance and strippability of the bolt like, and is that something you would recommend as part of your package with the rifle? You clean it once a year or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. So if I'm just going to cock this thing and, like a typical 3-position safety, you put it in the middle position and you can open the bolt. And while it's in the middle position, basically you lift that cocking piece up off the back of the bolt. So now I can thread this thing off.
Okay.
Oh, whoops. I got to recock it again here. Sorry, guys.
I was just going to say, it sounded like a click.
It can happen with fat fingers. But yeah, so it does strip. It does strip relatively easily.
So it's kind of like a Model 70 stripping method then, right?
Yeah, it threads out the back.
Okay.
So this one, I haven't actually replaced the firing pin yet. I took my grinder to this one, so it was deactivated for the shows. That was part of the deal if you were going to have a firearm that wasn't disassembled. But yeah, so it's essentially very much like you would see taking apart a Model 70. A little bit different in how it locates on the back of the bolt. It's got a little spring-loaded detent here that keeps it in position when the bolt is, pulled all the way out of the action, so that the shroud can't rotate on its own. But yeah, it'll be familiar to folks who run those actions currently, for sure. Three position safety. I was just going to say the 3-position safety is, the same as you would expect on that type of action. Although, I think with the geometry that it has, it's pretty smooth, pretty positive. It's got nice detents. Yeah, it functions well.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good point too. Is the 3-position safety is very good and has been for many, many years. But one of the common issues people run into is it sometimes is hard to actuate or move that safety forward and even back, more importantly, back into the position. It can be a little sticky, but that one looks like it's butter smooth. So
yeah, and it's been worked a fair bit too. But
demoed a lot.
It's definitely, I just like the fact it blocks the striker, and it's
the bolt.
It's not going anywhere.
It's a great design for sure. Let's see here, I got my whole list. Can you walk us through we're going to get a little lower in the system here about the recoil lug design and the bedding system that you would use with this going into the stock?
Sure. Yeah. So the stock is aluminum pillar bedded, and we mold the aluminum pillars into the stock when we manufacture it. They basically pop onto some bosses inside the mold and get cast in place. On top of that, we epoxy bed the barreled action into the stock afterward as well.
Okay.
So,
Okay, good. All right.
I'm just going recoil through my lug. I'll talk about recoil lug too. And you can't see it, but one thing you'll kind of notice is that the screw for the lug is fairly far forward. It is actually threaded into the bottom of the recoil lug, so the recoil lug is part of the receiver. Why I did that? A lot of modern actions have this screw located behind the recoil lug. This actually adds a lot of stiffness to the action. If you when I modeled this, the reaction to the cartridge being fired, how much flex you actually get in the tenon area of the action, because there's nothing holding it in place. It might only be half or 3/4 of an inch rearward of where the recoil lug is, but there's a lot of deflection there. And so moving the screw forward reduces a lot of that deflection and flex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize it sat so far forward. That's a cool design, actually.
Well, it's old school Mauser.
Yeah. Well, this is what I love about it. It's like, when you read on your website and talk about the design, like I said a couple of minutes ago, you're kind of pulling the good features from, different designs, and it's hard to argue with Mauser and what they developed. They're centuries ahead of their time, probably. And they did the job. I've told the story a couple times, but my uncle was a gunsmith, and he built a ton. I have a whole safe full of old Mauser actions. They're sticky and they're clunky and they're heavy, but the one thing they are is they're freaking reliable, and and they do the job. Okay, cool. Well, let's move up top and talk about your integral scope mounting system that you have there, because that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah. So I really wanted to come. Being a fan of British rifles and some of the really custom bespoke stuff. I've always been, a lover of like the double square bridge style where you've got dovetail mounted rings. And the reason I wanted to go down that path was twofold. The first being that you can always access your screws. You never have this concern of, you're at the range and your rifle maybe isn't shooting. Do I have a screw loose? Well, to check your screws, you've got to take your scope out of the rings. Like
back to ground zero. Yeah.
Back to ground zero. I've got a ring here in my hand, right? You've got 2 number 6 screws. They're accessible anytime you want to retorque them or check the torque on them. The other cool thing that this system allows you to do is if you have more than one set of rings, you can swap scopes really easily, right? You loosen the clamps, you remove one scope, you grab your other one for a different hunting situation, and you can pop it on top and torque it down. So the rail itself is it's essentially identical to the Tikka rail size.
Yeah.
And at first, I mean, there's lots of rail sizes out there, dovetail sizes that one could go with, but it just really fit the action well. Size wise, it seemed to make sense. So it's approximately 17 millimeters. But we make the rings as well. And the rings
so Mike,
are.
Then sorry to interrupt. Then can you run the Seiko Optilocks on that then if you didn't use your rings? Like say you got in a pinch or something?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the Optilocks because I think the Seiko receivers
right?
are tapered.
Okay.
From
but I guess
to back.
Okay.
But if they make Optilocks for the Tikka rail, then they likely would fit. But these are included
you make
with the
your
rifle. Own. Yeah, whatever size
so why
you want.
Would you?
And the real reason for that, was to try and line up. I mean, one of my pet peeves of rifles out there is, and factory rifles in particular, is the inability to have good cheek weld and eye alignment and bolt clearance all at the same time. Like people are always struggling to mount their scope as low as possible so they don't have to add a cheek riser or and that's something to me, it's like, guys, you've just overlooked probably one of the most important aspects of the entire thing is how it fits the user, right? So part of the reason I wanted to make my own rings was to be able to control that center line height of where the scope is. So with the stock design, I mean, it's got I don't know if you can see it on there, but it does have a negative sloping comb. Slopes down towards the action. The bolt handle itself is contoured so that it'll essentially clear any eyepiece that you can mount on this thing, and you will have excellent cheek weld. You'll have that eye alignment, and you don't have to monkey with that detail.
So one ring height.
One ring
what you
height.
have.
Yeah,
and that'll fit whatever 50 millimeter or whatever scope
it
objective,
fits,
no problem.
Yeah, it fits. Most 50s will fit. Some won't. It really depends on their belt, their ocular, or their just the dimensions of them. But any 44 and down fits excellent. I've got a Zeiss here, and I can probably just pop it on real quick. And there's a fair bit of room. This is a Zeiss 44.
Oh yeah. So even if you had the Zeiss 50, you can see you've got the scope cover on there. There's a significant gap there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But it is low enough that it does, it gets your head tight on the stock, and you've got really good eye alignment with the scope.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think if you've got to mount an aftermarket teak piece on your hunting rifle, then something was wrong in the design because it's really not meant to be. And I personally am a big fan of uh, the negative comb as well. I've got a few rifles with it, and we'll dig into the stock in a few minutes. But yeah, I'm with you. That's great. What else did I have on the scopes? Okay, I think that is there anything you can think of that we may have glossed over on the receiver side of things or the
You know
design?
what? Probably just the one thing to talk about would be magazine design.
Yep. Sorry, that's on my
That's
list too.
oh, is it? Okay, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's short actions I think are can be challenging for hand loaders, especially with modern bullets because of how short they are. So that was one
Mhm.
thing I wanted to address here. The internal magazine length of this rifle is 3 inches. So
Okay.
this is our box magazine. Um,
Mhm.
it's 6061 aluminum. And it's fully CNC'd. Yeah, it's light, it's stiff, and it works really well with the aluminum follower that goes with it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of rifle systems that use stamped magazine parts, and a lot of them work really well, and some of them
Mhm.
don't. There's actually
Mhm.
some high-end rifles out there that I've seen personally that use they use carbon fiber or other CFRP, carbon fiber reinforced plastic magazines,
Mhm.
and I've witnessed some of those high-end rifles not actually hold the top round down in the field because they're too flexible. They'll
Mhm.
actually push the wall of the magazine out of the way. Um, so I wanted to design something that was really robust. Obviously, it's not cheap to make a magazine out of aluminum and machine it entirely, but
Mhm.
I think it's superior product. You
Well,
can
and
see
it's
the internals there.
and the fact that you've got blind magazine with an aluminum inner, you're saving some weight there too. Because if you look at some of these others, and then you throw a metal clip, an external magazine inside of that, you've got two parts where you realistically only need one. How does the so you say it's a double stack. So
Yep,
what's your capacity? Is it 3 or 4 in
it's
the mag?
4. It's
It's
4
4.
down.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
yeah, and I mean it's part of the reason I like blind mags is just you can really leave the bottom slim and trim, um,
Mm-hmm.
and as well you're not cutting any holes in the stock, losing
Mm-hmm.
any stiffness. It's continuous carbon shell.
And then your trigger guard, what is that made out of? The bottom metal there.
It's 7075 aluminum.
Okay.
So basically all the aluminum parts are 7075, which is just a higher strength aluminum. The only part that isn't is the magazine box, which is 6061, and
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't see. It's not going to see the abuse or the
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you want to call it. It's not going to be beat up as much as the rest of the rifle. So
Yeah. No, it looks
yeah,
great.
but all of them are Type 3 hard anodized.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're solid. But yeah, they're all made
Okay.
from all the aluminum. Trigger guard included is it's all one piece of billet aluminum machined into its final shape.
Mm-hmm. And the screws are all the same size, I'm assuming. Size
So
screws.
we've got the two action screws are a little bit smaller than your typical rifle, which are 1/4 inch. These are number 12s.
Okay.
Yeah, through the design process, you just really don't need a screw that big for how much force you
Mm-hmm.
need to apply. Um,
Mm-hmm.
these are number 12s. They're a Torx T25. Um,
Okay.
The ring screws, we've got number 6s on the caps and 8s on the clamps, and they're all T15 torques.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. A great design. And I know the answer, but let's tell the audience. What are you running for a trigger system?
Yeah. So I'm using a Trigger Tech trigger. Originally, I was probably going to wind up using their Remington style trigger without a safety, but wound up as I was designing the receiver, they came out with the Kimber 84 trigger that year.
Wow, nice. Yeah.
So that'll.
Did we lose him, Blake?
Trigger hanger.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, you lost me for a sec. Sorry.
Yeah, just a second.
That's good. We got you back. Yeah, we didn't miss much there.
Yeah,
So,
just that it just allows a slimmer trigger hanger area. I could lop off a bunch of extra weight. The Kimber trigger bolts directly up into the receiver versus the Remington that has two hanger pins, two cross pins. Yeah. So, yeah, another awesome Canadian product.
They sure are. Yeah, I've got them in a bunch of rifles, and they're absolutely awesome triggers to work with. Easy to adjust and crisp and clean, and just they're a very good trigger. So, and that's cool that like just the most difficult challenge you have. It's not the first, it's not cutting the first pound out of a design on anything. It's those last ounces, right? Like you got to grind away on the ounces, maintain quality, maintain integrity. So yeah, that's so cool. Okay, well, let's jump to the stock.
Sure.
You told me a little bit about the stock, but I'll let you do your presentation on it for us.
Yeah, sure. So the stock is it's a carbon fiber glass hybrid. And so essentially, I'll back up a bit here. From the fore-end tip through the wrist, it's 100% carbon fiber cloth. And then the back end is actually fiberglass.
Okay.
The reason we did that is there's a little bit better recoil absorption with fiberglass. The cloth is the same weight as the carbon fiber cloth we would use, so it doesn't change the weight. It just makes it a little less harsh under recoil. A little better energy absorption. There's also a full length I-beam, carbon fiber I-beam through the entire fore-end back through the wrist.
Okay.
The stock itself, how it's likely molded differently than most stocks on the market. It uses a horizontally split mold. So I'm just gonna grab my other stock I've got here.
Okay.
And so what that means is the mold line is actually on the side of the stock. Rather than top and bottom. And so what that allows is it actually allows us to include the entire action and magazine area as well as the barrel channel as part of the mold. So, if you were to drill or cut into any area here, you're going to run into carbon fiber. So it is a true, continuous monocoque shell.
Yeah, one piece basically.
One piece, yeah. Where a lot of stocks, they basically pop them out of the mold, sit them in a mill, and then they mill out the entire action area barrel channel and then put bedding on top of that. Where this, you've got that continuous carbon fiber shell. So it's super stiff.
Yeah, and I guess too, from a manufacturing perspective, then your consistency is going to be 100% stock over stock, as opposed to, trying to carve out, everything works a little differently with each rifle. And I think that's a common thing that you see with mass produced. I use that term lightly, but it's one of the reasons I think that some rifles that you get out of a box, and won't name names, but you might have 4 or 5 guns from the same manufacturer that shoot great, and then you got that one that doesn't. and you find out that it was bedded poorly at the factory. And to me, when I hear that, it's like, well, how could it be bedded poorly at the factory? It should be simple, right? When you think about it, it should just be plug and play. But if there's variables there like that, then for sure. So you're using, I know you're partnered up with a manufacturer in Alberta that does the actual manufacturing, but you did the design of this.
That's right.
Maybe talk a little bit about that, because it's a common name known in the gun industry that the stock is derived from, at least from the factory. So I'll let you talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about the design. I wanted to keep, number one, I wanted a light stock, a stiff stock, and I wanted to keep the lines, I'll say, fairly traditional. A slimmer grip, not a huge forend. Essentially make a sleek rifle stock. But I also wanted to include a bunch of more modern features. We already talked about the negative comb. That really helps reduce recoil and get your head up into the right position. But the other one of the cool things I think is in a slim stock is the ambidextrous palm swell. So this stock has a really nice palm swell.
It does.
That's probably a better look at it. It's fairly flat on top of the tang. If you like putting your thumb up there, which I do, it just, that palm swell really lets me put my hand in the same place every time. The other thing we did was made the stock flat on bottom. This is probably the best view of that. So from forend tip through to the butt, it's flat. It just sits really nice on a backpack or a bag or a jacket or whatever you might be shooting off of. One of the cool, well, one thing, I mean, generally everything I design is because I hate something. It's more out of spite than anything else.
That's the mechanical engineering, Mike.
Exactly. But
solve a problem.
That's right. But yeah, this was actually these two-piece swivels were a little bit of a trick to figure out and to get molded in out of the stock mold. But I hate sling swivels that unscrew. It's one of my pet peeves of the single post style swivel bases. So this actually has a boss in the mold, and we screw a 6061 aluminum backer into the mold on that boss. The backer gets cast in place. It's pre-threaded, obviously, and then once it comes out of the mold, basically we can drop in these two screw swivel bases and torque them down.
Nice.
So they're kind of an old school touch, but they do have some function for sure.
Right on. And then on the front side, did I see a Spartan adapter on the front of that? On the
yeah. So this one we've got a Spartan adapter. We put a carbon pocket in the stock, so that it's not just I'll say epoxied into foam. It actually is epoxied right into a carbon pocket.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. No, for sure. But yeah, the manufacturer is Wildcat Composites here in Spruce Grove, Alberta. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best manufactured stocks, bar none. The stocks are hand laid. They're carbon fiber monocoque, carbon fiber and glass fiber monocoque, continuous fiber shell. And for the strength, I don't think there's anything lighter. Like this stock, obviously, without the guard and the swivel bases, painted with a pad, bedded with the Spartan adapter, it was 19.8 ounces. So it's integral part of the system to get a rifle that is this weight and shoots the way it does.
Yeah, Stuart at Wildcat has been, he's been making stocks for a long time. It's an excellent design. I've got a half a dozen, probably built close to 24 rifles over the years using his stocks, and they are definitely, in my opinion, they're the best you can buy. What have you got for recoil pad on the back end of that?
So this one has a little bit longer pad, but I'll show you the one that we're going with is the Shorty. It's basically a 15 millimeter pad, just slightly better than half an inch.
Okay.
It's a Cervellati pad. So they're a grind to fit pad, and they're very light, but they do a good job of absorbing recoil. And in these smaller calibers, there's not a ton of recoil to contend with, so it's non-issue. I think people look at the short pad and think they're going to get beat up, but they're pretty compliant. I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're pretty compliant, yet still have some good resistance for a thin pad.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the recoil, I mean, certainly like you say, with the short actions and the smaller calibers that you're building, that's certainly one aspect to it, but the design of the stock itself with the negative comb and just the way it's balanced, there's a lot goes into the absorption of recoil or deflection of recoil with that stock design too, right? Shootability. That's the word of the day here. Right?
Yeah, you bet it is. Yeah.
What about the length of pull? Is that something that's is that adjustable if you had like a smaller frame or a bigger person wanted to adjust that?
Totally. Yeah. So the mold itself, the original stock that this rifle wore when it was a true prototype, the wood stock that the mold was made from had about a 14.25 inch length of pull. So our stock mold gets us just past 14. So we can get to 14.5. I think, I can't remember now. I wish I remembered. In the configurator on the website, we go from 12.75, which starts to get pretty close to the swivel base back here, all the way out to, I think it's 14.25 is what we offer. So there's a good range there of lengths.
Okay, nice. Well, I've got some questions about the configurator and stuff, and we'll come back to that.
Sure.
So I think that covers the stock. Is there anything else that we missed on the stock side of things? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, these stocks are, they're painted with Endura 2-part epoxy paint. So, it's probably the toughest stuff you can put on a stock. They're just well-made piece of kit. And
what are you back to the receiver then? What are you coating the receiver and metal with?
So the receiver is actually bare. It's uncoated.
Okay.
Yeah. So this one, you see, it's a little bit shinier than what the production model is going to be. It hasn't been through the ceramic tumbler, but the production ones will be.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and the barrel. So the barrel's manufactured in Canada as well. Walk us through the barrel.
Sure. So our barrels are made by IBI. They do both the carbon and the stainless barrels for me. The contours are contours that I provided to them. So they're specific to this rifle. The barrel threads are 15/16 of an inch. And that's really due to how we had to design the receiver in titanium. it gives us a little bit of extra margin over the 7/8 thread of the Kimbers as well. We've got an integral flange here, like a Winchester Model 70 featherweight style barrel, if you can see that.
Oh yeah,
And
gotcha.
essentially what that does is it actually enables the barrel to act a little stiffer. It's got more surface area against the front of the receiver face, and it doesn't flex as much as a barrel that was just shank diameter would. So it's a little bit of extra stiffness there for hardly any weight. We're offering barrels in 20 and 22 inch. They're all threaded at the muzzle. Come with a muzzle cap and a brake if you want to brake. And I've got a carbon barrel here we can look at as well. I'll just grab it.
Well,
Yeah,
while
so-
you're doing that, Mike, before we jump into the carbon side of
Yeah,
things,
sure.
let's just talk about IBI, International Barrels, for a second. Going into this project, you had a plethora of options,
Yeah.
North American wide, but not so many on the Canadian side. What was the what was the actual, like, yeah, I'm going with IBI decision based on? What was the criteria that you needed there?
I mean, number one, I didn't want to have multiple suppliers. I wanted to have one supplier I could trust. The fact that they were in the process of developing a lighter, smaller diameter carbon contour really pushed them to the front of the pack. And I'll just say, all my dealings with IBI have been top notch. Yeah, they've been fantastic to work with, and frankly, they're stoked that there's another Canadian firearms business popping up, and they want to support that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, the barrels of theirs that I've shot have been fantastic. They look excellent through the bore scope. They clean up easy, and most importantly, they shoot really well. So it's hard to argue. Yeah,
I'm with you. I've been a longtime supporter and user of IBI barrels. I had one of the first carbon wrapped hunter contour barrels that they developed. I think it was like the third one, and there's so many good things about them that I like. First of all, Canadian made. They're local. They're very flexible. Ryan is he's a shooter himself, obviously very a competitive shooter, and his heart is in that business. And there's, I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn, but I was going to ask you about a break-in period with them, but I know the answer with IBIs. It's go to the range and shoot it.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about cleaning out, filings and burrs and any of that. The process in which they manufacture the barrels is really, really tight, and they are good. They're really good, and I was really happy to hear that you're using them for that. So that's cool. I haven't gone on the configurator and designed my dream rifle, but you said you're offering 2 different lengths.
Yeah.
Is that something that you might have more flexibility in time as things go on?
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And over time, there's going to be additional options available as we go. But I really felt like I had to keep, a bit of a rein on how many variations I wanted to offer. I've got, I have I basically have a selection of every barrel you see on the configurator in stock now, just waiting for our receivers to be done. So, without trying to go too broad and not be able to get something out the door in a reasonable amount of time, I wanted to keep it fairly tight. One thing I guess I should talk about a little bit on the stainless barrel, if I can keep going there.
Yeah, please. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail that.
No, it's all good. Just the contour. So the stainless contour we use is it would be, I'm trying to remember what the closest IBI contour is, but we're about 0.66 at the muzzle. And at the where the straight shank starts, where the taper ends, we're at 0.8 inches. So it's a fairly it's a fairly low tapering barrel, and yet we have a pretty good muzzle diameter. And the reason I wanted to do that is really to keep some weight out front, and make the rifle easy to balance well, and keep it easy to shoot. So, I mean, this rifle balances, I'll see if I can, it's always a trick to balance in your hand, but you know, this one bare balances well ahead of the recoil lug. You can't actually see my hand, can you? But you know, it's about there.
Yeah.
And that's always been one of my, you know, annoyances with light rifles is the super thin contour. Great to pack, hard, you know, doesn't shoot well, or hard to shoot well, I should say. Where, you know, this actually balances in the same position as my Seiko Varmint in 222. Right? Only it's 5 pounds 2 ounces.
Yeah.
So it adds to the shootability factor.
Right. You've got a brake on that one. Let's talk about the muzzle brake. You're manufacturing those in-house as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the brake is our design, and I've got one here for the carbon contour. It's a 2-port style brake. We actually have a torque socket on the muzzle end. I was never a fan of wrench flats, and I didn't want to have a big knurled nut on the outside of these barrels. You know, I wanted it clean and light. The brake on the stainless contour, you know, I think it weighs just over half an ounce. It's a titanium brake. Yeah, so each of them are individually fit to the rifle and timed into place and torqued. So they're not going anywhere.
And look
and
good
I think
too.
Well, just clean, right? You don't have
exactly.
any additional clap trap on there. And this one is just over an ounce, so they're pretty light. Some guys like hunting with brakes, some guys don't, but they definitely keep the muzzle jump to a minimum. It's probably the biggest benefit.
For sure. And if you you have a cap, obviously, for the, you know, if the guys don't want to brake.
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Same design, flush fit with the Torx.
Yeah, that's a great look too. Just adds to the element on the rifle. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the chamberings. Currently, you're running 3 calibers, short action, 470 bolt face. So you went with that family to start with. And I guess that was just, you know, they're pretty basic chamberings as far as that bolt face goes. Easy to buy ammunition for the most part. All 3 pretty accurate calibers. What else was the thought process behind choosing that configuration or those configurations?
No, that's a good question. I mean, as an ultralight backpack rifle, I wanted to start with calibers that I could truly build around an ultralight platform. So I didn't want to start with a Magnum action for that reason. You know, the more receiver weight that I add, the more barrel weight I'm going to have to add to correct the balance. And so that was probably the biggest driver. You know, I will say that I've had feedback where guys want long actions or they want short mags. You know, I've done a lot of hunting with some short mags, as well as the 708 primarily, and yeah, it's been a really good, reliable killer for me. You know, I'll say my longest kill with it was 350 yards. You know, and I think that's fairly typical of most mountain hunting. Obviously, some guys stretch it out there a lot further. You know, I think if you're going out past 500, then you really need to be looking at bullet choice, and much beyond that, you need to be looking at a different cartridge altogether. But yeah, the notion was to really start with what I could, you know, get to that minimum size and weight, and still have the balance and shootability that I wanted.
Yeah, and those are three really nice choices to start with for sure. With regards to the most frequently asked question that you have about when are the bigger calibers coming, you know, I was thinking about this today. I was like, well, that's just not an easy thing, right? If you've got a completely in-house, you know, engineered and designed receiver system set up for this specific, you know, caliber family, and then now you got to change all your tooling. You've got to build a completely new action, basically. You know, the stock, everything changes, right? So, you know, it's definitely, I would think, a phase 2 type of you know, endeavor, right? What are your thoughts on that? And is there some stuff in the works for, you know, the 2.0 version or the larger calibers?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been rolling around in the back of my head for quite some time as to where to go next and how to do that. The easiest approach is to stretch this out to a long action, and you know, obviously look at, you know, the 270, 30-06, 280 Ackley style cartridges, and I think that makes the most sense. You know, to do a magnum action, I really could have started with, you know, a Remington footprint and made things a whole lot easier for myself, but it wouldn't have got me to where I wanted to be, you know, weight wise, form factor wise, etc. Yeah, the logical progression of this is a long action for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'll just open up. Yeah. It opens up a lot of options.
Yeah. It does open up a lot of options. I was just going to say there's probably a production run or two of the shorts that I need to get built and shipped before I can expand the offerings.
Well, I think you know, you're going about it the right way. You know, start with one thing, build on it. If there is kinks that come out, which pretty much are expected, I think, in any new product that's being manufactured, there's going to be something somebody finds that you're going to probably have to enhance or, you know, adjust or something. And you don't want to have, you know, five different types of rifles out there and have to recall and do all that other, you know, crazy shit to rectify any issues. And honestly, it doesn't look like you're going to have much in the way of issues because you've put so much thought behind it. But yeah, I think slow and steady wins the race with this type of a project, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, this isn't a Remington SPS, so the tolerance for problems out of the box should be low, right? People should have very high expectations.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, there's a lot of manufacturers that, you know, getting into this and going down the path, even just my tolerances on the receiver, they were like, that's a non-starter, we can't do it, you know. And so it even that in itself speaks to the, you know, what we're trying to build here.
Yeah,
it's definitely a precision piece of machinery.
Any thoughts to doing custom chambering down the road? Like, I know you've done some Wildcats, you mentioned that before. Say 5 years from now and you've got say you've got 3 platforms out there, you've got the short, the long, and a magnum. if somebody phones you up and wants something, kind of out of the ordinary, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I would love to do that. I mean, I think that's fantastic. Ultimately that's the ultimate evolution I would like to get to, is be able to offer more custom configurations, and especially chamberings. I mean, that's part of the fun of new rifles, frankly, is being able to put it in that special cartridge that somebody wants.
You just got to take a look at my safe, right, Blake? It just never stops, actually.
That's right.
That's right. All right, cool. Well, this, I think we've definitely covered the ins and outs of the rifle system. I see Mitch Kendall asked a couple questions, but I think we've answered them there.
And I think we've answered Ed's question as well there.
Yeah, you showed that one on the screen, and he's got a big happy face on there as well. So I know he's happy to hear that answer. Well, let's fast forward a little and talk some general questions about the availability of the product and stuff. So you're waiting for your shipment so that you can get to gun building, right? You're waiting for the receivers to get in. That's where you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially just working through the first off. They're made in Calgary. The receivers are, so they're made here. Yeah, I can be there often, and I am there often, and it's really just perfecting some of the setups on. We basically have a couple test pieces that we've been, building, testing the jigging and tooling on, making those the way we want them before we do the production run. And so we're probably, the first two are probably ready for EDM actually Monday. And then I can actually, then we've got one more operation, and then I can build a second prototype here on what is essentially the production receiver.
Okay.
Yeah. But time-wise, really, we're looking at the end of April to have the production run of all the parts ready to go.
Okay. And you're taking pre-orders now for these rifles?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we are.
Question about.
Sorry, I was just going to say we're also in the process of developing our US website. So we do have, I do have all of our models approved for export already. So we're basically good to go once we get the US site up and running. So I've had a few folks reach out stateside. There's definitely some interest from the US, so that will be it'll be an option for them as well.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a hot ticket in the US for sure. So you're going to go, are you going to continue, at least obviously for the near future, you're going to go with consumer direct, order off the website? Is there any dealer discussions going on? I guess you've got to get production rolling first, right?
Yeah. There hasn't been any dealer discussions yet. We'll just have to see where that goes. I mean, I would love to stay direct, but we'll see if I can maintain that long term. Yeah, I mean, there's some great retailers out there. Well, yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah, for sure. We got to get some guns on the market first, right?
That's right.
So when it comes to the construction and putting all of these components together, say next week or in the next few weeks, do you have a team of a team of guys helping you with the assembly and doing all the gunsmith work? Or are you doing this all yourself?
I don't actually. I'm doing it myself, and so I really wanted to start out that way, as a way to control the quality. Obviously, I mean, there's some great smiths in Calgary, but yeah, to start out with, I want to make sure the thing cycles properly, the safety works properly, it feeds properly, right, the whole ball of wax. So it really, I've made my own fixtures and tooling to cut the extractors and do the barrel work. And essentially, I want these rifles to be as close to perfect as they can be when they ship. Everyone's going to get function tested. Everyone's going to get shot before it leaves. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about offering a scoped rifle option? Are you entertaining that at all? Are you partnering up with any optics? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing that. So there's actually there's some options on the website right now where you can add optics to the configuration, and then you can also go a step farther. So adding an optic, we basically mount it and zero it for you. And then beyond that, if you want to go to what we call our ready to hunt package, it includes a custom engraved turret to factory Hornady ammo, which is part of the reason we went with these 3 calibers, is the availability of good ammunition.
For sure. Awesome. Well, Mike, we're getting down to it, and I said we'd be about an hour and a half tearing your gun apart, and I think Blake just texted me, we're like 1:26 or something. So this has been awesome. I'm going to ask you one more serious question.
Sure.
Well, not serious, but one pertaining to it. What's the ultimate vision and primary goal long term for Alpine Riflecraft? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, hopefully, if dreams come true?
Yeah. From the business aspect, I want to bring as much of the manufacturing in-house as I possibly can. I've partnered up with really fantastic manufacturers to develop the product, and so not to take anything away from them, but I think the more that we can do internally ourselves, the better off we're going to be in the long run, the more competitive we'll be. And there's controlling that quality in-house is really important to me. I also see growth in the product line. We talked about that, a long action, perhaps a short mag action. Obviously those are quite a ways out. But then as well, just being able to do more in the conservation space. Like I absolutely love being able to be a part of that and know that you're either putting time resource or dollars resource into conservation projects that make a difference. Yeah, I just hope we can keep growing that part of the business too. And I would love to be donating, fully donating some rifles for raffle to generate funds. That would be super cool.
That's so awesome. Yeah. It's funny because the next question I had was completely related to conservation. If you go on Mike's website, you'll see there's a pretty big space dedicated to conservation, and you talk about your support for Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta and the Wild Sheep Society of BC. Just give us a sentence or two on what you feel conservation means to you personally, because it's reflected in what you're doing with your guns, obviously. But what are your thoughts on conservation?
Just trying to maintain and hopefully expand the incredible opportunities that we have as Western Canadians. I remember being a kid. My uncle was an outfitter in British Columbia in the Blackwater area west of Quesnel, Nasco.
Yep.
And I remember going to his house as a little guy and seeing mountain goats and caribou, and he'd been on doll sheep and stone sheep hunts, and those opportunities are special. And then for me to grow up and move to Alberta and have the opportunities here that we do, to hunt bighorn sheep on a general tag. I mean, my kids are just getting to the age now where they can start to tag along. And whether they do or they don't want to hunt when they're an adult, for them to have that opportunity, I think that's something we really need to fight for.
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. Well, as you know, I think we're all aligned with
Yeah.
the conservation, movement. It's nice to hear Canadian companies supporting conservation in Western Canada. It's Spike Camp's ethos. It's something Blake and I believe in a lot, and we're trying to partner in all ways, shapes, and forms with like-minded groups and people, and that's really like the ethos of Spike Camp. And I could talk about that for hours too, but it's
Yeah.
really nice to see and hear that. And a couple more just quick ones before we spin
Yeah.
off here. What's your favorite species to hunt?
Oh, that's pretty easy. Rocky Mountain bighorns.
I bet you've been on quite a few sheep hunts. You've been a sheep hunter for a while, right?
Yeah, I think my first sheep hunt was 2002, and my sheep hunts look very different today than they did 22 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, incredible journey. I mean, there's just the experiences you have being in the backcountry in those environments. It's a really special opportunity. So yeah, by far my favorite hunt. You see things that you would never see if you weren't out there chasing those critters.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right. Last question for you, buddy. What is
Yeah.
your if the money was no object, time, location, what's Mike Drury's dream hunt?
Oof. Yeah, I kind of bounce around between two, but I think the dream hunt would be like a no timeline backpack stone sheep hunt.
That's
Yeah.
probably every Alberta sheep hunter's dream, right?
Probably. The grass
Well,
always looks greener over the fence, right?
yeah, well, exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. Well, that's awesome. All right. So where can we find Alpine Riflecraft? What are the options?
yeah, so the website's alpineriflecraft.ca. A lot of the information we talked about tonight is on there. There's a spec sheet, there's a user manual, there's a FAQ section that answers a bunch of the questions I've had, fairly often. The configurator's on there. Yeah, that's the best place. I'm fairly active on Instagram as Alpine Riflecraft. So yeah, check it out there too. There's lots of pictures of the rifle, of different parts and pieces, and some of the thought that's went into it, and some hunting stuff too. Got to throw some hunting
Yeah.
stuff in there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, right on. And we can find you on Spike Camp. You're
That's
one of
true.
our members, so it's awesome to
Yeah.
see you there, and we appreciate your support. And it seems that our guns and hand loading space is pretty busy over the winter because we've got some pretty hardcore gun guys and gals on the platform. So when it's not hunting season, and this is like dream come true for me to have my own little gun discussions going on there. So it's really nice to see you on there and active. And I know you've had a few questions thrown your way from some of our members, and that's awesome. So
Yeah. No,
anyway,
and that's
Mike,
fun. I mean, I was just going to say, yeah, that's fun. I love talking about, guns and cartridges and all of it. So yeah, if anyone ever has a question, I mean, Spike Camp's a great way to reach out to me as well. I'm pretty transparent when it comes to talking about this stuff. So, hit me up if there's something you want to know.
right on. Awesome, buddy. And yeah, I'll just say this, your website, honestly, we didn't really need to do an interview tonight because everything that we talked about is on the website, but it's really nice to be able to pull the gun up and put it on the screen and just, get the discussion going.
Yeah,
So,
get some shots here.
oh yeah, parting shots for sure. Yeah, it's a beautiful rifle, Mike. Congratulations on the Zenith system and the project. It takes a lot of guts, and I know it takes a lot of money and time. I can only imagine the amount of time you've got in the design, and just talking to you and getting to know you. the quality that you're looking for in that rifle is going to be there, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of happy customers. And I know there's a few on the platform that got itchy credit cards. One just popped up right there. My buddy Ed, I know he's looking to peddle some stuff so he could buy one right away. So
Right on.
you and I, we're gonna have to have a chat here because I got to get my hands on one. So
Absolutely.
anyway, right on. Well,
Right
thank
on.
you very much, Mike. We've had
Yeah.
you for quite a bit here tonight. We appreciate your time, and
That was
best
great.
of luck.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun. Thanks, guys.